If you haven't hit a roadblock on your startup journey, then you haven't actually started. Roadblocks are the predictably unpredictable part of starting a new venture. And today we're talking with Jeremy Hanks, founder of Dsco, and investor Dalton Wright, about how our approach to those early challenges to our businesses can bring us even closer to a perfect pitch. What is Perfect Pitch? It's a podcast from Kickstart that reveals the minds of both investors and entrepreneurs throughout a startup's journey. So whether that's uncovering what everyone's really thinking during a startup pitch or learning how entrepreneurs like you have managed their first major roadblock, Perfect Pitch is an honest, quick, and tactical guide to help you on your startup journey. I'm your host, Karen Zelnick, and I'm excited to introduce you to today's guests. First, our founder, Jeremy Hanks. Jeremy is the founder and executive chairman of Dsco, and this is the third company you've founded, correct, Jeremy?
Yep.
Awesome. And all of them focus on adapting supply chain management. So you have a really great perspective on not only what it's like to be a founder over the course of 20 years, but also very specific insights into the evolution of supply chain. And I love that. I love when founders find their passion, and their passion isn't just entrepreneurship in general, it's your passion. So you're passionate about supply chain.
I think I am. And I would say that I am because of this entrepreneur arc over the last 20 years. I think when I was growing up on a dairy farm in southern Idaho, I do not think that I would have said, hey, in the year 2020, this is what my expertise, right? Like my passion would be, but that's where I've landed.
And you also mentioned that you're a budding naturalist, an avid reader, and you dabble in writing poetry. So my real question and my first question for you, Jeremy, is is there anything that you can't do?
I throw that stuff in my bio so that it seems like I do things other than supply chain and e-commerce. But I love nature. I took a program from Utah State University, their Utah Master Naturalist program. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
And I like to mess around with rhymes. I'm a huge fan of alliteration, where words start with the same.
No, I love alliteration too. So this is going to be a great discussion. Yeah. Throw a lot of them in there. It's going to be awesome. Okay.
Yeah. It's, anyone who knows me knows that I'm somewhat addicted to Post-it notes. I single-handedly keep the business 3M in business. And I like to kind of, dabble on Post-it notes. So I call myself the Post-it poet. I figure if 3M would sponsor me as the Post-it poet, maybe we could take it mainstream. And
did you make a TikTok about it? Because I feel like you've got something here.
Yeah, I stay away from TikTok just because of the whole Chinese communism spying overlord type thing.
There's that. Yeah.
I don't trust the social media.
Okay, I'm sending you Post-it notes after this because I also love Post-it notes. I'm a big fan of the neon ones.
And super sticky Post-it notes are garbage because when you peel them, when you peel them off, they're so sticky that it curves the top half inch of the note, the force of it. And then when you stick them down on a surface, they don't lay flat. They're all tipped. It's
That's
the
rubbish.
Worst thing ever. Yeah. It's garbage. Yeah. Stick with the normal original Post-it note. So that's my rant.
You hear that, 3M? Do it. And before we get on another tangent about Post-it notes or alliteration, because I could talk about both all day, let's introduce our venture capitalist, Dalton Wright. He's a partner at Kickstart Fund who's passionate, among other things, about helping founders pursue their vision. Your work with startups goes back to the beginning of Kickstart, right, Dalton, when it was founded in 2008?
Yeah. I was lucky to join Gavin early on before anybody cared about seed stage investing in Utah. And really, we had this ambition to be, the fund that would be the early risk-taking supportive group that would write checks where nobody else would take that type of a risk on unproven first-time founders. So I was very much attracted and drawn to the kind of the blank slate nature of entrepreneurship. The earlier you go, I guess it's more open what these companies could become. And so I've always really loved this stage. And I've been with Kickstart since 2008 when I first joined. I did some other things in the interim. So I haven't been at Kickstart for the past decade, but I rejoined at the tail end of Fund 2 and helped raise 3, 4, and 5, which is the current fund that we're investing out of.
Yeah, which is awesome. And in the interim, you were getting your MBA from Wharton and you were also helping start Mexico's first early stage tech fund. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
That's awesome.
Gavin taught me the trade, the craft of seed stage investing. With that skill set, I spent a couple of years in Mexico raising the first seed stage / Series A fund in the country. It was called Alta Ventures. It was a really novel fund in the country. And spent some time raising that, and then came back to do grad school at Penn and did a dual degree called the Wharton Lauder program, which was just a really kind of highlight of my life so far.
Oh, so cool. And anything else that you would like entrepreneurs to know about who you are or what you do?
I guess what I would want entrepreneurs to know about me is that I am very easily excitable about big ideas. That's kind of, if I have any great skill set, I guess, it's that I can quickly catch a vision and, quickly ramp up in my excitement with an entrepreneur. Now I have to temper that with the analysis and try to check myself on really what could go wrong in these companies and what the risks are that we're facing. But I love dreaming with founders. I love being able to imagine a different world. And my career is meaningful because I get to meet people like Jeremy who are dedicating their lives to solving big problems. And I get to go on those journeys as a support. I'm not taking all the risk. I'm not the one who's the hero of any of these stories by any stretch, but I love my position being able to just work with people who are making the difference, the prime movers. And I get to help them take their visions and turn them into reality.
Oh my gosh, I love that. This is going to be such a good discussion. So for all those entrepreneurs listening, if you want to know more about Dalton, about Jeremy Hanks or Dsco, we'll have more info for you in our show notes at kickstartfund.com. Let's just dive right into the discussion. Jeremy, why supply chain? Talk to us about founding Dsco and your previous companies. Why supply chain?
So back in 97, 98, was talking to a couple friends of mine, and then I got one of them in particular. We started a business, and the idea came about to sell skis on the internet. It was a ski swap. So if you're in the snow sports world, you probably know about ski swaps. You go to a high school, you buy skis. And I thought, like most people, that a lot of those skis are individuals selling their skis to other individuals. But there are kind of these niche businesses that buy closeout skis from manufacturers and from retailers. And so it's kind of a business that is dealing with this distressed inventory. And I knew some family kind of acquaintances growing up in Southern Idaho, the Masoner family, and that's what they did. They would buy closeout skis, thousands and thousands of pairs from K2, Rossignol, all of the big manufacturers in the spring. And then in the fall, they would drive all over the Western United States and sell these skis at ski swaps. And so that was like, let's do this on the internet. Let's do that. Started as a ski trade. And then that ultimately turned into gear trade because we became more generic. And that put me onto this road of dealing with inventory problems, inventory distortion, closeout problem. What is a closeout? It's like, hey, we bought 100 pairs of skis. We sold 70 of them. We have 30 left, but it's March, it's April. Nobody wants to buy skis. And next year, the new models are coming. So that inventory becomes distressed, right? Like we have to get rid of it and make way for the new stuff. That is what my career and kind of this arc across 3 companies has been dealing with, is this idea of inventory distortion and inventory distress for retailers and for the manufacturers, distributors, and the brands. At the end of gear trade, we were trying to make it go. And what we came across was a distributor in Salt Lake City called Liberty Mountain. And they're like, hey, it'd be interesting to help with closeouts, but what we really need help with is drop shipping. And we were like, what's drop shipping? We didn't know. And they said, well, drop shipping is where we as the supplier, we as the manufacturer / distributor, the wholesale side of the equation, we have the inventory. We're going to hold that inventory on behalf of a retailer. The retailer is going to sell something that they don't have or own. And then once it sells to the consumer, we'll culminate the wholesale side of the transaction, and then we will ship it directly to the consumer. And it was being driven by a lot of the pure play e-tailers, Planet Outdoors, Alltrek, Backcountry.com. And I remember thinking, okay, if a retailer did only drop shipping, they would never have this 30 pairs of skis that never sold, right? Like the closeout problem for retailers goes away. Hey, let's go tackle that problem. That became Doba. We started that in 2002. We were the fastest growing company in Utah from 2003 to 2007. We were number 23 on the Inc. 500 because we landed at this time where there was this democratization of e-commerce, selling online, eBay power sellers. So we kind of exploded in this product broker, virtual distributor, drop shipping type company called Doba. And then in 2012, we saw an opportunity to take the technology that we had built for ourselves to run Doba and to commercialize that for other retailers and manufacturers and brands in the broader kind of consumer supply chain, consumer e-commerce industry. And so in 2012, we spun the technology out into a new company, which wasn't called Dsco, but was what became Dsco. So we're coming up on 9 years ago is when we did that technology spinoff. So it's kind of one thing led to another.
Yeah.
And now we're in.
And here we are today.
Yep, here we are today.
The amazing company that you're running. That's awesome. Dalton, what was your perspective on Dsco when Jeremy came to pitch it?
Well, I actually wasn't in the original pitch meeting. So I rejoined Kickstart. So as I mentioned in the intro, and so it was a new investment in the portfolio. I joined the board as it was within probably the first year of Kickstart having made the investment. So I wasn't the one who originated it or saw it or made the original investment decision, but I joined the board as a kind of newly returning member of the Kickstart team. So,
I remember I got a call, the former Kickstart team member and our board member, we would meet every month for breakfast. And it was like, hey, that's all over. Meet Dalton. He's your new guy. He's your new point person. I was like, all right, let's figure this out. So it was an interesting way that Dalton and I came together as far as working through Dsco and Kickstart.
And I joined at a time where it wasn't totally obvious where the company was going. It was making progress, but there were a lot of question marks and roadblocks that the company was facing. And so it wasn't a join and, well, this is exactly what I expected from any venture investment. It's just, up and to the right or anything like that. Yeah. It's the reality of startups. Probably during that time, everybody was looking at Jeremy thinking, man, just raised another round. Guys kind of repeat success already. But on the inside, as you're dealing with the actual problems of the company, it's pretty sobering, what has to be done and what we're up against.
So let's talk about roadblocks. Every startup has them. Dalton, you were just kind of mentioning a few of them. So Jeremy and Dalton, let's get into some of the roadblocks that Dsco was up against in these early days.
It was interesting for us because we should have expected the roadblocks, but we didn't. We came out of Doba. We were kind of a well-known company. My picture had been on the cover of all of the Utah magazines and stuff. And we had all this technology. We had a team of 11 people who most of us had spent a decade on this problem. We culminated a seed round with Kickstart only a few months into it. And we grew our team to almost 20 people. And it was kind of off to the races. We kind of assumed.
You were up and to the right, it seemed like,
we
going there.
Assumed that we had this thing figured out and dialed and it was just going to go. But then, reality kicks in and you raise capital and, whether you raise $1 million or 10 million or 100 million, that's only so much capital, right? And so there's a certain amount of time and progress you need to make. And coming into 2014, so, we took 2.5, 3 years, we just kind of realized there's not going to be success here. We knew that we needed to do something different. We didn't know what it was, but we for sure knew we needed more time. So that was really difficult because we scaled the team way back.
Oh, that's such a tough call.
We had to buy time. And as we engaged with the market, I think we had lost sight of some of what we learned, right? So we had this foundation of drop shipping and retailers and brands, and we had this thesis of what the industry needed, where the world was going to go. And as soon as we started engaging with the market, we lost sight of a lot of that. With hindsight now, I can see that it started to mirror the supply chain software integration industry that exists today, which we feel is super, super, super broken. So we got pulled in different directions and really were struggling. We were approaching this window of time at the end of 2014 where I started to wonder, are we going to just have to call this? Are we just going to have to pull the plug?
Yeah. And I would just add my perspective on was, what I was experiencing as a new board member, joining a company that had tons of potential. I mean, the market size and the opportunity to me felt very apparent, but the consumers were not buying the product. For those that were consuming it, there was a lot of custom work that was being done. Didn't feel like we really had kind of a repeatable product. And as we were doing this work to develop out the product to meet the different needs of the customers, we were expanding kind of the complexity of the product. And so, it actually in some ways became harder for the next customer to consume because there was additional complexity built in the product that previously served another customer that no longer was relevant to the next customer. And so what Jeremy did effectively, and I think some of this is just the nature of the focus that can be imposed upon a company when resources are dwindling, when time is running out, that the company had to, one, buy more runway, but also eliminate all extraneous activities, features that they could no longer support, and boil the product down to a core offering that could be consumed from, kind of a base level entry point. And I think that's really when the company started to notice that they were figuring something out. That was another, I'd say, early lesson that I observed, was that when you're trying to serve both sides of your marketplace, you can easily overbuild different features for both sides, when at the end of the day, what Jeremy and Dsco discovered is that there were some key customers that if they could get one side of the marketplace buying into their network model, they had the power to bring their trading partners with them onto the network. And so it was, kind of a prioritization. They had to focus down on who cared the most, who was willing to really fight for this technology to exist in the market. And in finding the answers to those questions, they found the partners that have been relentless supporters of the business, that are fully bought into what Dsco is trying to do. And that was a process to get to that point, of course.
Yeah. Jeremy, can you talk us a little bit through that process? So in 2014, you're like, maybe we pull the plug. One, how do you shift your mind to be like, we're going to keep going? And then two, could you walk us through that process Dalton just kind of talked about?
Yeah. So it was a really interesting time. It seemed like we had uncovered more what wasn't working, right? Like what not to do versus what would work and what we should do. Even for me personally, it was kind of this like, okay, I did drop shipping type stuff for 10 years at Doba. Now we're 3 or 4 years into this one, and it's been a battle. Do I have another, even maybe bigger battle in me?
Yeah.
And we were at this point of extreme necessity. We had to either give up or somehow scrap and find a way to power through. I went on a trip to Costa Rica with my family over Christmas in 2014, and I had no technology. I left my phone home. I had a little notebook, and I didn't think about our problems a whole lot. But on the flight home, I couldn't sleep, and I filled the notebook with a lot of thoughts and ideas, and came back and said, okay, maybe this is too little too late, but I just felt a huge obligation to our investors to not give up until like kind of maybe the bitter end. If we had not had investors, I would have pulled the plug. I would have bailed. So I had the support and kind of that expectation from investors. And so we started 2015. Here's the plan. We're going to simplify. We're going to standardize. We're going to focus on a level playing field. Those ideas, it became what we called the Disco Ball project. It was this, there were 7 of us working 6-7 days a week to relaunch the technology. And a lot of it is we just got rid of things. We deleted 2/3 of the fields in our database because they had never had any data in them. So everything came together and we had clarity of the strategy. We had clarity of how it would go to market. We kind of saw the future. We were able to build what we needed. And that was on us, right? And we had amazing support from our investors and our board. Our head of sales at the time, he believed a little bit even more than I did, because I kind of was leaning to and preparing myself. We're still going to have to wind this thing down. It's just going to be later in 2015 or early 2016. And then what the universe did is they brought Nordstrom, right? Nordstrom came along.
I mean, what a thing to bring though, Nordstrom.
Yeah, I think it came mostly, I've talked to my wife a lot about this. I'm a very fashionable person. Anyone who knows me knows, like, I'm high fashion. It's not like I grew up on a farm and I wear shorts and t-shirts at all. It's like I am put together well. We ask all of our new team members at Dsco, like, what retailer represents your personality, right? Like Nordstrom would probably be maybe not even on my list, right? Like it would be REI, Cabela's.
Because you're a naturalist. A budding naturalist.
Probably Sur La Table. I just, a lot of people probably before Nordstrom. But Nordstrom came looking for something different in how they work with their brand partners. And this was where I didn't think we would get Nordstrom just because of the complexities of working with a company that big. At the time, they were running a drop shipping program with 1,200 of their most important brand partners. So think of the companies Nordstrom sells product for. That's the list, right? Like the biggest names in the fashion and apparel industry. It was hundreds of millions of dollars of consumer sales. And here we were, 7 of us here in Utah, trying to launch this new thing. It was halfway done. And, at the end of August 2015, we had less than $5,000 in the bank. September 27th of 2015, Nordstrom signs a contract with our company to basically move their entire drop shipping program over to us. There were a few individuals at Nordstrom, one in particular, Chris Keppel. They really, really put their necks out on the line, and they aligned to us as a scrappy, entrepreneurial, company who could help them do things that the traditional vendors, the traditional solution providers would not be able to do. And then we had another maybe year and a half of like, oh my gosh, how do we actually make this work? Like, how do we deliver this realignment of our solution, our technology, and our strategy? How do we deliver that to a best-in-class enterprise retailer? And there were continuous points along the way where it could have all gone off the rails. And somehow it all came together. And then 2016 turned into 2017. And that's when Dsco really started to have some interesting opportunities and it's really just built since then.
Jeremy, I loved all of that. As you were talking, I could just feel the grit and the determination and the passion that entrepreneurs have to have. And I can see you on the plane writing in your notebook and coming back and being like, okay, we're going to do this. We've got a commitment to investors. And then Dalton, as the investor, could you sense that as well? Like, how were you looking at this situation? And were you kind of feeling a little bit the same in 2014? Like, oh, maybe we're going to have to kind of close?
Oh, absolutely. It would be very rare for an investor to ever have more conviction in an investment than the founder himself or herself.
Yeah.
I mean, at the seed stage, there's not really the opportunity to recruit a new management team that maybe is checking out, because who's going to have a better vision than the original founder, right? You know, as the companies mature and they get to product market fit and they're ramping revenues, then you can start to think about, well, you know, let's bring in talent that can help accelerate this company and take it to the next level. But if you're dealing with a novel, new approach to a long-standing problem, and you bet on a person who had the unique insight and the particular passion to go after this, to not have somebody like that in a company would just be devastating. And so I don't think I'm sharing too much. This is just part of the story of Dsco, that there was a point in time where we as a firm approved a $50,000 additional check to have an orderly shutdown of the company. You know, that's what we thought was going to happen, because we were talking to Jeremy and we had stalled out, and who else was going to write an investment in the company? And had it not been for Jeremy, we never would have continued to write checks into the company. I think for us, you have to know that you have a founder, you have a real entrepreneur. You can have good ideas, you can have good products, interesting markets. But for us as really early investors, if you don't have the person who cares about it more than anybody else on the planet, it's going to turn into a job for somebody when it gets hard. But for Jeremy, this was a mission that he was on. And so nobody was going to work harder in figuring this out than Jeremy. And that was certainly the case. And so for us, it was an example of a company that it still had a lot of potential. It looked like it was not going to turn out the way that we hoped. And that is, even with the best teams and the best plans, a lot of startups still fail, right? And so it wasn't like, oh, this, you know, how could this possibly have happened? It's always hard. I think, you know, to Jeremy's credit, he was the one who refused to throw in the towel and to wave the white flag. So he says that, you know, if he hadn't had investors, maybe he would have quit. But I kind of doubt that. I take you at your face, you know, at your word, Jeremy, but I also know how determined you are and how grit, it does define you. That's something that you look for when you're writing the first check in a company is this a founder that, you know, is going to care about this long after other people have gotten tired because it's taking too long or it's hard. And as investors, if you don't have that person, you do have to move on.
And Dalton and I had a conversation. I still remember it was the 4th of July, 2015. And the conversation we had is we're both board members outside of anything else. So we have a fiduciary duty to look after the organization. And that includes all stakeholders. It includes investors. It includes the founders and the team. It includes customers. And then we had a different investor who said, you know, no, you fight to the very end. And so we did. And so we took annual renewals from some of our current customers into the, you know, summer and fall of 2015, not for sure knowing whether we were going to have to wind this thing down. But I definitely look back on that period where I relied on some strong support from investors and from team members, because I think personally, even though I was ready to fight more, I kind of had started to very much feel like I was fighting and it was too little too late. You know, my wife, Amy, could tell you about the times when I would have my breakdowns and I'd get emotional and I'd cry and I'd be like, we should just shut it down. It was a challenging year. And then the spark came in Nordstrom, and Dalton helped us engineer a way to get some financing so that we had some chance with Nordstrom. Nordstrom became a strategic investor, became an amazing partner. A lot happened over that 2014, 15, 16. And then the company kind of then said, okay, 2017 on, so the last 3 years has been more about how do we build this to go do what we set out to do almost 10 years ago.
Dalton, Jeremy, thank you both for this conversation, because this is the reality of a startup. It's approving closeout costs. Jeremy, it's you feeling like you have to shut down the company and needing to rely on strong team members sometimes. All the ups and downs of the startup world, this is the reality. I'm like emotional about all of that you all just shared.
It is the grit and the stick to it. But any entrepreneur who doesn't credit, whether you call it luck or providence or fortune or the universe or God or whatever, you have to give credit to the fact of being in the right place at the right time is a major part of any startup success. And so, yes, we take credit for showing up and fighting, but there were weeks or days or months where one little thing goes one way or the other, and we're doing a postmortem on how did Dsco fail versus how did we succeed. Yeah. So I think it's good to keep humble. Those are the personality traits that allow you to be gritty.
And when I think about grit as well, I also think about the ability to provide leadership, even in the face of overwhelming odds. That story that Jeremy shared of disconnecting and coming back with a surge of new ideas, I think the entrepreneurs out there ought to listen to that it would be tempting to hear the word grit and think, well, I just need to keep plugging away and beating my head against this wall until finally it gives way. And Jeremy actually realized that doesn't work, right? You burn yourself out and you don't necessarily get to a new novel insight by trying to just keep doing the thing that wasn't working. This is not a story of let's just keep pushing and see if something gives way. Had Jeremy not created the mental space for himself to then be able to do a very creative sprint, he, could have continued doing the same thing that eventually would have just caused us to grind to a halt, and we wouldn't have actually found the path forward. So it's important for entrepreneurs to understand that those flashes of brilliance can be as valuable as several quarters of trying to do the same thing over and over again.
It's like creative grit.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, hard work is great, but if I can have a machine do something that I would do on the farm with a shovel, let's have the machine do it. It's like a creative approach to being gritty.
Yeah, I love that. This has been such an amazing discussion. Like, Jeremy, thank you, and Dalton, so much for your vulnerability and honesty on the realities of what happens when you hit a roadblock in a startup and you keep going. And Jeremy, I just have one last question for you. And I would love to know, what is the single most effective practice you've found that's had the greatest impact on your success?
Can I say two things instead of one?
Yes.
Okay, so the two things I think that's had the most impact on my success is, first of all, acknowledging and being humble about the success and not letting my ego get too big. There are a lot of people around entrepreneurs, team members, partners and spouses, investors, customers, strategic partners. And so acknowledging that it's a very complicated puzzle that has to come together. And then second, that trip that I did to Costa Rica, where I just really disconnected, I've done that every year. I've had some investors really get freaked out when I told them subsequently, that I was going to take 3 weeks in Vietnam with no access to technology. Literally, you can't get a hold of me. And hopefully the wheels don't fly off the bus. Not Dalton, I should say, but a couple other ones. It's you can't leave. You're the founder of this startup. But yeah, really disconnect entirely. No technology, no news, no social, no anything. And in my opinion, it needs to be at least 2 weeks, 14 days. You need to do that once a year.
Dalton, any final thoughts for entrepreneurs?
What I see in Jeremy and what I've seen in this company is a consistent North Star reason for existing. So it's not that they're just out there because they want to build a business together and they want to make money and they, want to have success or anything like that. I think those are all elements of the overall picture here. But Jeremy, you've maintained a consistent vision for what you're trying to do in the world. It's evolved a little bit, but I think you're still pursuing the same original vision that you had, and it's being validated as you go. I think also, when you look at companies that, really kind of manage to make it through some really tough times where it's not just an obvious, hey, everything's going great, we figured it out. I think the flexibility while also maintaining that core focus of what you're trying to accomplish is important. So Those are kind of dual things that have to coexist. One, the flexibility to choose new ways to address the problem. At the same time, if you don't really have a clear vision of the problem to be solved or why you should exist, you'll quickly fade out along the way as you're in the middle of kind of interim movements in the business, and you can forget why we're even in business in the first place. And I think that's what Jeremy has done effectively for this company all these years, is he's the keeper of the vision.
Thank you both so much, Dalton and Jeremy, for being on the episode with us today. The thing that I, had impressed upon me again while we were talking is something actually Dalton has mentioned about, like, this is the refiner's fire of like 2014. You think you're gonna have to close down. You're on the plane back, not sure what you're gonna do. Like, that is the setting where entrepreneurs thrive. And Jeremy, you're just like such a witness to that. And I'm just was so impressed with that. And also just both of you being so vulnerable in the conversation. So thank you both so much for that. And of course, thank you for listening as we dive deep into what it takes to create the perfect pitch and a strong foundation for startups. If you want to learn more about our investor, Dalton Wright from Kickstart, or our founder, Jeremy Hanks, and what he and his amazing team are doing at Dsco, we'll have a link to the company and a longer bio in our show notes at kickstartfund.com. We'll be back next time with more insights from entrepreneurs and the investors who fund them, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. You can listen to more episodes of Perfect Pitch wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher. And if you like what you're learning, leave us a review. See you next time.